Welcome back to another edition of Components Breakdown. Today I am very excited to bring you the newly released game called Inca Empire. Inca Empire is a really fabulous 3 to 4 player game that takes about 90 to 120 minutes to complete. It's focused on the rise and fall of the Incan Empire over 4 different eras, in which players are going to represent one of the 4 Apus generals working for the Sapa Inca, who was the supreme or divine leader or governor, emperor of the time. Now, each of these players is going to be responsible for expanding their empire, conquering neighboring territories, building cities, garrisons, terraces, all the while trying to reconnect these areas with road networks back to the capital city of Cuzco. The gameplay mechanics in Inca Empire revolve around 2 basic styles: area influence or area control, as well as route and network building. So let's go ahead and open up the box and take a look inside. Now, I've set up a 4-player game, but before I start explaining all the rules, let's go ahead and look at the components one more time. We'll start with the board, and on the board you're going to notice a 120-point track around the outside that is housed for the victory points. There is a era chart at the top which walks you through all of the different turn phases. There are 4 eras in the game, and each of these eras are divided into a number of different phases, such as the Inca Phase here, the Sun Phase, the People Phase, then back to the Sun Phase. And each of these phases, minus the first round, will end in a Sapa Inca Phase where players will get points. Looking at the board, the central city is Cuzco, in which each of the 4 players will place one of their route markers over the road area in that region. Also, there are territory markers that are placed face down in each of the regions, minus the ones that surround the city of Cuzco. What these markers represent are a couple different things. If you look at them, the top number represents their conquer number, how many laborers you will have to use to conquer it. The small number is how many points immediately you will get, and the last one is how many workers you will get when this token has been conquered and placed on your side. So for this one, it's going to take you 3 of your workers. You're going to get 0 victory points. However, during each of the Inca phases, you're going to get 3 extra workers. Whereas this one will give you 4 victory points immediately, but only give you 1 additional worker. There are other parts on the city that represent significant areas, such as cities, where you can actually build cities. You can only build cities on places that show that there were actual cities built in the Inca Empire. There are also ones where you can place or build outposts. And then there are significant cities, which allow you to get extra points if you build a temple over top of the city. And the number of points you get is located there. There is also a place on the side of the board for the sun cards and a discard pile for those sun cards. Now, starting off the game, each player is going to randomly get a turn order marker, which will change as the game progresses. They're going to start with all of their roads. They're going to start with one of these cheat sheets, which is really well done. It gives you an idea of how much each of the items that you'll be building cost for their labors, how many victory points you'll get immediately, and then how many victory points you will get during the Sapa Inca Phase. Very, very valuable tool to use. Also, each player will start with one of these little icons that is placed on the 0 part of the turn track. That is your scoring marker. And each player will start off with 3 sun cards in their hand that will be used during a specific sun phase in the game. Now, there's other various markers that I will get to once we start explaining the game, but that is what the game ships with, so let's go ahead and start explaining the gameplay mechanics. Now, as I previously mentioned, there are 4 phases in the game, and what happens is each of these are going to take place an X number of times depending upon the era that you are starting in. The very first phase we're going to talk about is the Inca Phase, which is basically the government phase of the game. It's represented by these labor markers that you see at the top with a person on it, and this is where each of the players is going to collect an X number of worker tokens from a conglomeration of different sources. The first thing they're going to look at is the top of the board. And for the very first phase of the game that we see right here, you're going to collect 4 worker tokens. So each player is going to simply take 4 of these worker tokens that you see here and place them on their side of the board. Players are also going to collect victory points for any of the conquered regions that they have in front of them. As I had mentioned earlier, every time you conquer one of these regions, you take this and you place it on your side of the table. And you are going to add that many laborers or workers to your side during the Inca Phase. So that player would get a 5th resource or worker marker for that turn if he had that marker in front of him. You're also going to get 1 extra laborer for every single terrace that you own. So that's how you collect laborers. The last thing that's going to happen in the Inca Phase is that a really unique step is going to happen that I haven't really seen in other games. And that is the first player, or the player who's leading the game or winning the game, is going to give workers to the lesser fortunate players. Now, this is not going to happen in the first era. It's just going to start happening in the second era. So the first player, whoever is leading on the victory point track, is going to give 1 of their workers to the 4th place player. When the 3rd and 4th era start, the 1st place player is going to give 2 of theirs to the 4th place player, and the 2nd place player is going to give 1 of theirs to the 3rd place player. Very unique, very cool mechanic that tries to simulate the Inca ability to help out other people. Although you are competing in the game, you're very much trying to assist all the other players build up this huge Inca empire. And that also goes into the scoring. You really don't want to build in areas that you're off by yourself. And we'll get into that moment as well. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself. So those 3 things are going to happen. The first thing is collect your labor tokens. Second thing is collect your other labor tokens from your conquered and your terraces. And then each of the players is going to aid one another, depending upon what era they are in. Now, before we get into another main phase of the game, let me explain this era track up here, because it's important that everyone understands how this works. This is the counter for showing where you are in a particular era. As players complete different phases, such as the Inca Phase or the People Phase, once they're done, this is going to move down, and then people are going to complete the next phase. Once you reach the bottom of the track, you simply move back up, and then you do these phases one more time, and you keep moving in this pattern all the way until you get to the end of the game. So in the first era, as you see here, there's only 1 Inca and 2 People phases. So we're going to kind of skip around and tell you what the other phases actually do. Right now we're going to explain the Sun Phase, which is really the most difficult phase to understand in the game. The Sun Phase consists of a couple different events that are going to happen. The first thing is you're going to determine the player order. The player order only stays the same in the first era, and that's when we decided which players are going to be which number. Once you get past the first era, you're going to look at where players are on the victory point track. Now, I've simulated this just to show you as an example. It works from backwards to front. So the last place player is going to be the number 1 player. The number 2 player is always the player on the outside, the person that is furthest away. So he will be the number 2 player. And then the inside player will be the number 3 player, and then the first place player is the number 4 player. Now, this plays a really big importance in the game because, of course, you want to win the game by having the most victory points, but that's not always the best strategy in order to pursue your goals. And the reason for that is the Sun events. Now, after you've determined your player order, in player order, players are going to take from their hand 1 of their 3 Sun cards and play it face up or face down in one of these 4 quadrants. You can only have 1 Sun card in each quadrant per phase that happens. So, looking at the turn order, if the orange player put their card there, the brown player could only put theirs in one of these other 3 spots. So at the end of the phase, all 4 spots will be filled with 1 particular card. Now, these Sun cards provide either negative or positive events. They usually reduce people's, phase opportunities. They provide additional action opportunities, or they just really mess with the gameplay and the basic mechanics. So how they work is that each player is going to flip them over, and all these events are going to happen. But the unique thing and the cool thing that makes this work so well is that this card only affects the blue and the brown player. Whatever is here affects the orange and the green player, and whatever here's, you guys get the idea. So whatever is in these quadrants affects those players. Now, in rounds or eras where there's multiple Sun cards that come up, you're going to have multiple cards in these quadrants which will be affecting you and another one of your opponents. So there's a real duality between, do I want to be the first player and last in line so I can make sure that my Sun card affects me? Or do I really want to get screwed, basically, by being in first place and having people put negative cards in my quadrant? Now, you have to remember that whatever you put there is also not only affecting you or this player, but it's also affecting the player that they are adjacent to. It's a really, really awesome mechanic and something I have not seen before in a game. It really makes this game unique, and it really shifts your ability to make decisions on the fly and whether or not you want to get victory points now or get victory points later. You can't skip up the sun events. You have to make sure you concentrate on them, because if you don't, you can really get screwed in the game. The last thing that happens in this phase is, of course, to reveal all these and resolve the sun events in a particular order. Now, the last phase of the game is called the other main phase of the game is called the people phase, and this is where most of the main actions are going to take place. You can do your actions in any order that you so wish. However, you have to choose to do one and follow through all the way to the end before you start another. The two main actions are constructing or building roads. Building roads, you simply get 2 roads for free, and you connect them to any area that you are already part of, so Brown can extend himself. Now, the problem here is that you cannot extend into unconquered areas. So you're going to have to try to conquer places as quickly as possible and not try to overextend yourself too quickly. The construction part is allowing yourself to build cities, garrisons, or outposts, conquering regions, building temples, or building terraces. Or you can actually use a worker to actually build an additional road outside of the 2 free roads you get. As I showed you before, all of these gameplay cards will show you exactly what you can do and how many workers you have to utilize to use them, plus how many victory points you get for each of them. Now, there are plenty of rules on where you can build, why you can build cities, what you have to do in order to build cities, and terraces and temples, and how many points they give you. I'm not going to get into that part, but that's what happens during this people phase of the game. Now, the last phase of the game that happens at the end of every era is the Sapa Inca phase, and this is where the Sapa Inca rewards all the players for all of the things they have done. And basically what you will be doing is going back through your score sheet here and looking to see if you have met any of these conditions. So looking at the very first one here, if I can get zoomed in on this, which I don't think I will be for some reason, if you have built a city, sorry about that. If you have built a city, there we go, and it connects to your network, you're going to get 3 points, which is the right-hand number. If you built a temple and it connects to your network, you get 1 point. And you go through that list and get points for everything you have built. Now, the trick here with this game, which is really unique, is that you don't want to go off by yourself building up your own empire, because you really want to piggyback off other people's accomplishments in the game. Trying to build off on your own is not a good strategy, and it never really pays off in the end. So you want to try to manipulate where you build your roads and how you connect your networks. Now, mind you, you cannot have a road in the same place somewhere that someone else does, but you can build around them so you still connect into a region that has been conquered, or where a city has been built, or where an outpost has been built, or maybe even where a temple has been built. Because if you can somehow connect to that conquered land, you're going to get points off that player's accomplishments. This is a very, very unique game. It's not like anything I've ever played before. It's an area control game, but it's really not. It is a networking game, but it's really not. It's a combat game in a way because of the sun tiles here, but it's really not. It's not like anything I've played. It's really unique. It's a wonderful addition to my collection. I think it's one of the best games that I've played, and at least one of the most unique and rewarding games that I've played in a long time. So that is Inca Empire. I hope that I've explained it as best I can, and I've got people excited about it because it's something that people really should take a look at. Thanks again for watching.